Hello, everybody. Today I have Nutrition by Victoria with me. We wanted to talk about her transformation. Basically, she was raw for a little while, then she was during rider protocols. Wanted to ask her about that. She also talks a lot about metabolic damage, and I think that is probably the main area where we'll concentrate today because get a lot of questions about that, and I know she does too. So, welcome to the channel.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
So I guess we'll get started off on probably the question that everybody asks the most is, do calories really matter?
Absolutely. You have to eat enough in order to promote insulin sensitivity in your body. There's so much research, especially coming out now, that under eating, even if you're not aware of that you're under eating, you're not intentionally doing it. If you are, you're promoting insulin resistance in your body, which translates to fat storage and weight gain.
Because a lot of people come on here and they try desperately to find doctors who promote, calories in, calories out. And
Mm-hmm.
I just think that brings about a lot of eating disorders. I mean, what do you think on that whole thing?
Yeah, and it does. And it's unfortunate because a lot of doctors are unaware of the effects of under eating on the body. I mean, like 1,500 calorie a day diets are really popular. I know High Carb Hannah like wrote a program about, eat like a 1,500 calorie meal plan. Plentiful Kiki does that. I did a video on Broccoli Mom. She's losing weight by high volume eating, low calorie density eating is a way to fill up your stomach with volume, but not get enough calories. So you maintain a calorie deficit and lose weight, but it's at the expense of your metabolism. Eventually, all these people end up with some kind of health consequence due to following that style of eating. And it's becoming more known that you need to eat enough in order to maintain metabolic homeostasis, in order to be healthy. All my textbooks from my schooling, I have a master's of science in human nutrition, suggest that a female needs to eat 2,400 calories a day in order to meet energy and nutrient requirements, and a man needs 3,000 calories a day. And these are averages, but also minimums from what I recommend people to do, because you really need to be making sure you're eating enough. And when you have a calorie surplus of carbohydrates, you're telling your body every day, hey, there's enough food here, so it doesn't store the carbohydrates as fat. When we undereat on calories, specifically carbohydrate calories, we tell our body to store carbohydrates when they come in as fat. And that's all due to changes in our insulin sensitivity.
Now, what do you think is happening to all these people going on these juice cleanses and water fasts and all that kind of stuff? You think they're screwing up their metabolism, or you think they're fine?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their own threshold for what they can handle, right? So before I went all in on a high carb, low fat, plant-based vegan diet, I spent at least 5 to 10 years dabbling with calorie restriction, yo-yo dieting, doing a low carb diet. I never was full on keto, but I was definitely into low carb, low calorie for a while. I've done water fasting. But I don't think I ever like made it the whole day, but I've done like extended, 24-hour, fast on just water. I've probably done juice fast. I can't think of it like specifically, but during that time, I looked healthy, right? But I wasn't. I was anemic, and I had issues with my menstrual cycle being regular. And this was all because I was borderline underweight and constantly calorie restricting. So I think a lot of people end up like yo-yoing, they do a water fast and then they go back to their eating style. I know that a lot of people like being raw vegan now, and it's super trendy, but you'll notice that their fat content of their diet is generally a lot higher than most people's. And they say, you know, the fiber and the nutrients and all that are really good. But like when it comes down to it, if you're not eating enough carbohydrate calories, your body is going to retaliate. And the consequences of that can be chronic, and they don't ever have to be addressed, but they show up, especially as you get older. Like a lot of women, especially like my mom's generation, they all struggle with their weight. And when they were my age and younger, they were all dieting. They were all smoking cigarettes, eating cotton balls, whatever they could do in order to be skinny. And then the consequence of that is now that they're in menopause, their metabolism is super low and they all struggle with their weight.
Because you did too, right? You rebounded pretty hard. Didn't you gain about 40, 60 pounds or something like that?
Yeah, probably a little over 60 pounds. I went from like 125, and I'm almost 6 foot tall, and 125 was my lowest, all the way up to like 185, 190. And the last time I weighed 190 was when I gave birth to my second child, Violet. And that's after I had done the majority of my metabolic healing. So I gained all the way up to that weight eating exclusively fruits and vegetables too. But I went all in. I ate for my appetite. I stopped doing any kind of fasting. And it's kind of like my body took over at that point too. As soon as I kind of gave it permission to start eating when it needed to, I just packed on the weight, and there was nothing I could do about it. I couldn't fast anymore. I couldn't, I just had to give into it. And everybody was like, oh my God, what happened to you? My grandma was like, you got fat. And like being that weight at my height, I was really like maybe borderline overweight, but it was just such like a shock to people, I think, because they were so used to me being like a lean bean for the most part. And I think everybody kind of like puts a lot of value on being super skinny too. Like we value that supermodel aesthetic in our society. And I think that, you know, that brings eating disorders and kind of, you know, doing all this crazy stuff with your diet. It makes it popular. And I just think it's funny because it's 2023. I've been in like the dieting nutrition world for at least 15 years now. And I see the same things kind of like circulating. And I'm like, when is calorie restriction going to phase itself out? And it shows up in so many forms: water fasting, juice fasting, starch solution, maximum weight loss program, being raw vegan. Like a lot of people ask me about Tanny Raw. At one point she was eating like 3,000 calories a day. She's my height. She was really lean. Now she recommends people to eat 1,200 calories a day.
Yeah.
I get her ex-clients.
Yeah. I don't, you know, if you watch even, I forget what his name is, did that potato reset for a year. Now he's on the calorie restriction bandwagon, you know, and even McDougall himself said that he wishes he never even wrote the maximum weight loss because he's seen what it's turned into.
Well, he himself, I think, is trying to like gain weight right now because he got so skinny. But he also doesn't look healthy, in my opinion. Like he doesn't have that glow to him. Like when people are doing things right, and what I mean by right is eating enough calories, right? Because that's all it comes down to. Our metabolism is like, hey, we're going to be at optimal health functioning as long as you are eating enough calories every day. Okay. So it's almost like the people who have never dieted in their whole lives or done water fasting or anything, but eat like a standard American diet are better off metabolically speaking when they come to a healthy diet, as long as they maintain carbohydrate calorie sufficiency in their diet. They get
you see it. Yeah, you see it because, you know, I got people in my comments that said, oh, I finally, you know, I was listening. I did what you said, you know, me. And they're like, I can't even keep weight on. But were people coming from my end of it, where I wasn't really restricting, but I was only eating fat and you know, protein. I, you know, destroyed some of my organs, but it's a struggle. So people who came from like to eat whatever they want to are gonna thrive on it.
Yeah, actually, my brother-in-law did keto for a while, and he wasn't calorie restricting. He was eating, as much as he wanted, and he still rebounded really hard when he could no longer maintain it. And I'm pretty sure, like, he's pre-diabetic now or something from doing that. And the thing is that because a lot of the clients that I work with, they're coming from what I call metabolic damage, where they've dieted, they've tried everything. They've tried Tanny Raw, they've tried Healthy Emmy, they've tried maximum weight loss program, they've done fasting, like they've done it all. I get everyone's ex-clients. They all come to me eventually. But the only thing is that when I work with them, everybody typically gains weight and they don't like it. But it's something that you have to go through in order to get to where you want to be. I went through it, and it's taking me a decade to be where I'm at now. And granted, in that time period, I also had 2 children. I also kind of yo-yoed within, like, I'd be all in and then I'd back out because I'm like, is this really like what I have to do in order to like be naturally skinny or lean again? And yeah, it's what I had to do. I had to go all in. I had to reset my leptin. Leptin is a hormone that circulates in our blood that manages our appetite, like our long-term appetite, and it also dictates like our body fat levels. So when leptin's really low in the blood, it increases our appetite so that we store body fat. And then on the other side, when leptin levels are really high, it means that we have enough body fat, and so it decreases our appetite. So we really want normal circulating leptin so that we eat when we're hungry, we stop when we're full, and then that also promotes insulin sensitivity. So It's all connected, and it's all connected through cortisol as well. So elevated cortisol actually drives down leptin, which makes you hungrier, right? And also promotes fat storage because insulin becomes resistant when leptin levels are low as well and cortisol is elevated. And that's standard for anyone who's undereating. And undereating is very, like I said earlier in the video, you don't have to be controlling it. If you are undereating for your body's energy needs and you're unaware of it, you're still going to get the same outcome with the elevated cortisol, the lowered leptin levels, and the insulin resistance.
Yeah, and do you think the fruit versus starch thing? What do you think that it matters if you eat fruit or starch? I know combining them is not good, but as far as fruit and starch,
so I have gotten the results that I've received, which I've lost of the 60 plus pounds that I had gained. I've lost over 40 now. So my BMI is about like a 19-20. My weight ranges like from 140 to 145 right now. Again, I'm almost 6 foot tall. And that whole time I've been eating like raw till 4. Fruit for breakfast, fruit for lunch, starch for dinner. I've spent time eating just fruit and like cutting starch, and I've spent less time having starch all day because I just don't feel good. I really need to have a lot of fruit in my diet to feel good. And I think it comes down to like when you're talking about carbohydrates and meeting your carbohydrate needs every day, you need to be able to eat as much fruit as you can to get the simple sugars in, the sucrose, the fructose, the glucose. And those sugars, they break down a lot easier than starch does. So during the day, you're eating fruit, you're going to get that energy a lot quicker to your cells, right? Because the digestion of it is just so much faster than starch. Starch is heavier, it's complex carbohydrates. You have a lot of glucose packed into starch. So it's ideal for eating at nighttime when you're about to go to bed and you want to have some energy for the next day because you have all this complex starch that needs to be broken down into glucose to fill your glycogen reserve. So that's kind of the concept of doing raw till 4. And also why I feel, you need to have both in your diet in order to meet your carbohydrate calorie needs.
Yeah.
I recently just did predominantly fruit for the last 2 months. And we were talking about this, and I was saying how, ironically, like as I was tracking my calories, I eat the same amount of calories, whether I'm eating just fruit or I'm eating fruit and starch. It's about 3,000 calories a day. And I actually find sometimes that when I have like a lower calorie density starches in my diet, like squash or something like that, I actually end up not eating enough calories because of the calorie density of that food and how filling it is, but it's so low calorie. And then I wake up the next day and I'm like, oh man, I need to eat a lot of food because I didn't get enough calories in. So really you want to like have that signaling in your body mastered, you know, where you know how to eat enough calories every day. And your body trusts you and you can trust your body. And when you meet that balance, that's when you've like created that metabolic homeostasis within your body that promotes that turns your body from a fat storer to a fat burner. But it's very delicate, especially if you've come from any kind of restriction. Like your body is like, I want survival reserves. You know, if you've done any kind of carbohydrate calorie restriction in the past, the people who have the best results are the ones who've never dieted, you know, because you're not programming your body to have those survival reserves. Your body's like, oh, there's always food available, so I don't need this. But then there's also, you know, if you eat too much fat and you're having carbohydrate calorie sufficiency, then that's going to promote insulin resistance and encourage fat storage as well. But for the people who are like raw vegan, and typically when I look and analyze like somebody who's raw vegan, their diet, they're getting a lot of calories from fat.
Yeah.
And not all of them, you know, like I can think of Raw Food Romance. I think her name's Melissa. She'll show she does like an 80-10-10, but everyone always ends up needing those fats, right? And if you're not having starch in your diet, you're replacing it with fat. Like no one is doing full on all fruit except for Eli. But
I think Chris Kendall too. I interviewed him, I believe, and he doesn't do any fat, so I don't know how he manages.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going to do any fats or starch, you have to get enough calories in from fruit. And I know Chris does. Like he is like the master of like fruit-based recipes and lives in Costa Rica or something where he has access to a lot of really good fruit all the time. Because that's the one thing that I kind of ran into with it being winter and wanting to do an all fruit diet. And I include like juices and canned fruit and dried fruit and like all the fruits when I do all fruit. Like I don't specifically do raw because raw you end up eating fats. And I don't like to eat a lot of fats. I don't feel good on them. They don't digest well for me. But it's also winter where I'm at and the fruit quality is just, you know, it's not that great. So, I mean, you know what I'm talking about. We both.
Yeah, we're basically on the same, you know, geographical plane here. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I just got a watermelon and I ate it because it was edible, but I was like, oh man, like this is not good.
They're not. That's why I don't buy them this time of year.
Yeah. Like cantaloupes have been good and like some berries are good coming in from California, but everything's being imported and citrus is good, but sometimes it's like hit or miss because sometimes it just tastes like really old, like it's been sitting in the warehouse forever or it's been overly sprayed. It's hard to get good quality fruit. So if you're going to do all fruit, like I like to have the backups with it. And then, you know, I've started eating starch again and doing my raw till 4 thing. And I knew that I was going to go back to that just because it's easier. It's easier in terms of calorie sufficiency to do raw till 4. In my opinion.
Now, what do you think of the people? Because, you know, the Chinese people that I talked to over the year think I'm nuts for even eating raw food. I mean, all they do is eat starch, the ones that I know. Yeah. I mean, because there's going to be a lot of people watching this that live even more north than we do, if you can imagine, and have no access whatsoever to fruit. Do you think you can legitimately do it on starches alone?
I don't. I think everybody has access to dried fruit and juice and canned fruit. And I think that is a better option to get those sugars in, get those simple sugars in, than to do just the starches. Like it's so easy to undereat on starch and it is like a rock in your gut. Like when I eat starch, like I eat it at the end of the day and I literally shut down for the day,
Yeah.
like your body has to spend a lot more time and energy digesting starch. So why not, I have like so many canned peaches in my pantry right now for like, stocking up just in case anything happens. But like you could do that. And also like I'll show my date box here. I was snacking on these. Like you can order fresh dates from California, Arizona. They're all still like in season right now. They come in around September and then you can eat them all winter long. Citrus too, like citrus and bananas. You should be able to get those even if you live like up in Canada. I know a lot of Canadians end up doing raw veganism.
They're more raw than anybody. I'm like, I don't understand it. Yeah. You find more raw vegans in Canada than anywhere else. I don't know how that happened.
I know. I think like there's a lot of them in Toronto, but there's probably like more of a scene, and like Toronto being a huge city, you're going to have more imported food and stuff like that available.
Yeah.
But the price of it too, like it's so expensive to do like fruit-based raw. Just my grocery bill was higher.
Oh yeah, quite a bit. Yeah.
But I like to incorporate some of the cheaper foods too, like the canned fruits and stuff like that, which helps to offset some of that. But then, like I don't feel much of a difference doing all fruit versus like having the starch in. Like sometimes I feel like lighter. I know Eli talked about that in the interview you just did with him, and how like when he sticks to his all fruit diet, he feels lighter. Like I will say that I get that sensation.
Yeah.
But because I'm so active and I like being active, I feel like I have more energy when I'm also including the starch. And it just comes down to that carbohydrate calorie sufficiency. Like you have more access to the carbohydrates. And my friend Devin Melonbelly, actually, we talk a lot about this. And she's like, rice digests for me just as good as fruit does for the most part. Maybe it's a little bit dehydrating because you have to cook it, but then you drink some water with it or you eat some vegetables with it and it, goes down smooth.
I gotta say I'm not the same. I don't know if you saw the video where I'm reviewing doing rice for 2 weeks. I already think I'm going to stop. It doesn't digest as good as potatoes.
Yeah, well, the rice, it's in terms of fiber content, it's different, and it's more of a processed, whole food versus potatoes.
Yeah.
I also think it's easier to eat a lot of rice than it is to eat a lot of potatoes too. So, but really, like, I think that it comes down, like, if I wasn't an athlete, I'd say, I would probably stick more towards fruit, just because I feel like because the starches are heavier, it requires more digestive energy, whereas fruit doesn't require a whole lot of digestive energy at all. It's like built in with its own things to like break it down, right? Yeah. Its own enzymes and nutrients. Whereas starch, like it doesn't come with that. You have to cook it to break it down. And then in your system, you're going to be using amylase in order to further break it down, where you don't need any of your digestive enzymes to break down fruit. And then when it comes to like fats and proteins, you also have enzymes, lipase and protease, that help to break down those molecules as well. So starch is going to require more energy from digestion in order to break it down completely to utilize it. So if you have compromised GI function at all, and I know you've talked about having compromised like liver function, if you have compromised pancreatic function. I come from a digestive disorder myself, where I've had a gastroparesis and IBS. So I've kind of had to like work with that, and I've found that getting fitter and my body getting stronger metabolically, I've been able to handle more starch.
I mean, yeah, that could be it. I'm genuinely trying to do this as lazy as possible. I have a long enough schedule, like my day, like between art, DoorDash, making videos, getting back to people. I already have like a 12-hour day. I'm not trying to add an hour and a half of bike riding to that. So I'm genuinely, Because when I look back at when I was riding the bike and lost all that weight, I mean, Sandy was mad. She was getting mad. I mean, I would go for 8-hour rides on a Sunday, and I'm like, this was my only day to hang out with her. I'm trying to be as lazy as humanly possible and get this done, because I think most people, and I come from a lifting background. Like, you go lift 2-3 times a week. That's all you really do. You don't really even consider, cardio.
Yeah. And I mean, that's obviously more anabolic training. Cardio is going to be catabolic training. So if your goal is to get smaller, lose fat, lose muscle, like, just in terms for anybody, like, let's bring up Harley and Natasha, for instance, right? High level endurance athletes. Natasha was a sprinter or maybe a long distance runner in high school. Harley has put in so many kilometers on the bike. And so their metabolism, and because Natasha's never dieted, I don't think Harley's had a whole lot of like past experience with too much restriction either. Like, eating unlimited carbohydrates and having that kind of fitness level, immediately is going to translate to being like the smallest, leanest possible that you can. So they're always saying, like, eat unlimited carbohydrates, but also like do the training, because that makes the body more catabolic. If you're going to go the lazy route with this, with weight loss or healing or whatever, which it's not even being lazy. It's
not being lazy.
Break,
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry to cut you off, but like, if I do train, I'll sleep for like 12 hours because my body is still trying to heal, and I'm not trying to sleep for 12 hours a day.
Yeah. And that's what I tell people, because when you're recovering from metabolic damage, it's not advantageous to go out and train for 8 hours a day. I didn't do that at the beginning. Most people have a lot of adrenal fatigue issues, a lot of other issues that come from under eating, restricting, yo-yo dieting, fasting, that need to be recovered in order for you to be able to handle that level of training. Like, I've spent time where I'm like trying to like push myself to see how much like volume on the bike I can handle, see how much intensity on the bike I can handle, or running wise. And I always come back to like my default where I do what feels good, because otherwise you can end up stressing your body out too much if you can't recover. If you need 12 hours of rest after you're out for that amount of training, but you can't get it in, then you're actually going to put yourself back more than you would have otherwise. So I always recommend people do like 30 minutes a day of just like easy walking, cycling, whatever, just to get that cardio in, so that you are improving your VO2 max, which helps with getting more oxygen in to encourage fat burning.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah. I mean, right. I'm waiting until I'm not sleeping 10 hours, just not even exercising. Like, it's really, I'm like, seriously, yesterday I slept 10 hours. I'm like, no.
I will say that at the beginning of within the first 2 years of my journey, and I just recently posted a picture that I found where I took it at my like 2-year all-in mark. It's up on my Instagram. I remember I was living in Arizona at the time in a travel trailer, and that's all I did was sleep. I would sleep like 10 to 12 hours a day, and then I'd get up and I'd walk my dog, and I'd like ride my little stationary bike in the trailer. And that was it, because I was still recovering from metabolic damage. And you have to like, kind of give in to that and let your body do what it needs to do.
I think that's what I've finally done. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's where the results lie, because this process has to be highly intuitive. So when you're like maybe going through periods where, oh, I just want to eat fruit now, or I want to do raw till 4, I need to take a break from rice or something like that. It's fine to like listen to your body and do that, especially when you're still healing. But it's so important to make sure, even when you're having those time periods, that you're getting enough calories in.
Yeah, 100%. Because, like you said, potatoes will fill you up quicker than you probably really should be filled up.
But potatoes are also pretty calorie dense too. Like, it's easy to eat like 4 big potatoes, and then that's like 1,000 calories,
Yeah, I mean, because if you look at the Irish, which I am, so I look at that mostly. I mean, some of those the men were eating up to 15 to 18 pounds or something like that potatoes a day, and some of the women were up to like 13 pounds. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot, and people and they were skinny, and that was the only time in their history that they like the population quadrupled in a very
Mhm.
short amount of time. So, I mean, that's something to really look at.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that because they've went through potato famines, the Irish in history, that actually programmed in their genetics. So if anybody is Irish, you could have a propensity towards like fat storage when you encounter any kind of carbohydrate restriction because in the genetic line it got programmed.
Yeah, that's when my family came over because they
Yeah.
had, they had money. So, but the people who didn't have money, they just died. I mean, so yeah, but yeah, my family came over. That's actually if you look at Ellis Island, that's when we came over, and
Mhm.
that's why. So that
Yeah.
might be why it's built into me.
Yeah, and I like to tell people that too, like when they do my coaching program or I work with them one on one, because some people do have a tendency to rebound really hard and they just have a tendency to always be holding more weight on them. And generally, if you look at their family history, at some point, someone encountered a famine. You know, you've had world wars and food famines, or if you're from like the islands, if you have any kind of like island ancestry, like they generally are larger people because their bodies are programmed for storage of
Ireland's an
nutrients.
island. Yeah. I mean, yeah, so I got the world against me, I guess. But
No, the thing about it though is that anybody can reach their like ideal lean body weight based on their genetic potential, you know? So like not everybody's going to be like supermodel skinny or
I don't
like
want to be.
cyclist level skinny. Um, because that might not be healthy for your genetics. Like I don't think for me personally, like going below a BMI of 19 is going to be healthy for my hormones. Like, and my body just seems like as it's lost weight through this journey, I would lose like 5 pound in 5 pound increments, just totally randomly.
Yeah, same here.
I'd be like, I go on the scale and be like, oh my gosh, I'm like 5 pounds less and I didn't even do anything. You know, my body just dropped that weight. And a lot of times it's just fluid weight that we're holding on to that's extra. But it is some fat weight too. Um, but then it just like stays there, you know? And I feel like once you really get to like your ideal lean body weight, your body's just going to stay there unless you're doing a whole shit ton of like catabolic training, where you're forcing, you know, your body to use those fat reserves, then you're going to have to like start eating more fat to prevent yourself from going underweight so that you don't run into like hormonal problems. So a lot of people will ask me, well, don't you need to eat fat for your hormones? And I'm like, only if you're underweight, you
Yeah.
know, and you're having a problem. Like if you're an underweight female and you're not menstruating regularly, then that's an indication that you need to increase your calories and increase your fats in order to promote that regularity. Otherwise, like I have never had a need to eat like overt fats for any reason. And that's why I say to the, you know, the raw vegan community, they're just replacing fat, you know, for like the starches or whatever, fats for the carbohydrates. Like you don't need to eat fats. Like our body gets all its essential omega 3s from primarily eating like raw leafy vegetables and fruits. Um, and, you know, that's all you need in terms of fat grams. I think Colin Campbell did a study that showed like in the human diet, you only need 2.5% of your calories coming from fat in order to be healthy.
Yeah.
Like our fat needs are so low and they're completely met by just eating enough calories every day.
Yeah, they are extremely low. I do believe he said something about that actually. I actually wanted to talk about the cardio thing again. So I'm gonna because everybody's just like, well, the only reason Durian Ryder's is skinny and Natasha or whoever is skinny is because they did a bunch of cardio. I don't buy into that. Do you think you absolutely have to do cardio to
I
get
think it just depends on what your goals are. Um, I think you can turn your body into a catabolic fat burning machine by just eating a high carb, low fat, plant based vegan diet. I mean, our basal metabolism has to run every day. And even at rest, we are burning about 30% carbohydrates and 70% fat. So when we do cardio exercise, we're burning 50% carbs, 50% fat. So we're always burning carbs to fat. And in order to even burn fat, we need to have enough carbs coming in. So I like to say it's like your carbs are like your kindling and your fat is like your logs. You know, in order to even get the fire started, you need to have your kindling. So, you know, get the process going. So regardless, you're going to be burning fat, stored fat, if there's a fat deficit and you're insulin sensitive. So that's what it really comes down to, is you need your insulin to be sensitive so that the carbohydrates that are coming into your diet aren't being stored as fat, because they will if you're insulin resistant. Okay. So the beautiful thing about cardio is, one, I mean, everybody should be doing it. I think like the American Heart Association or Dietetic Association, one of them, you know, just general health guidelines says 120 minutes a week of like brisk walking. So that just makes your body healthier and more efficient. And you end up, you know, moving your body every day anyways. And I've found that I've gotten better results by improving my fitness. But I will say too that if I didn't do anything, I'd probably still maintain a BMI of like 21 without doing anything, you know, just because I've trained my metabolism now to be a fat burner versus a fat storer. And so the diet is the most important aspect. The cardio will help, you know. So like Harley and Natasha have their results because of their diet, but also their really high level of cardiovascular fitness. They both probably have a VO2 max that's very high. And the higher your VO2 max is, the more oxygen you're taking in, the more fat you can burn. So that's the premise behind cardiovascular exercise, is you can burn more fat when you're taking in more oxygen. And then you actually end up burning more fat at rest too, when your VO2 max is higher. So getting back to like the burning of 30% carbs at rest, 70% fat, that rate, you know, how much carbs and fat you're burning is going to be dependent on what your basal metabolism is. And you can make your basal metabolism higher by being fitter and having a higher VO2 max. So you don't have to, you know, be like a top level athlete, but it is healthy to be doing some kind of cardiovascular exercise regularly.
Okay. I mean, you know, I mean, we've definitely fit into our categories, because I'm just the bigger dude and you're just the skinnier, you know, female, and you love doing your cardio. And I'm like the guy that would be in the village that can lift just about anything if you could get me to actually do it. You know what I mean? And that, I think that is where the body styles actually come from. You know, if you needed to be rescued, you certainly want to ask me to go run and find help. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be like, all right, next week I'll get to it. But you know, like you would just be able to go do it.
Well, that's what my husband says, is I'm like the Energizer Bunny, but he's like you, where he's just like a well-built. My husband's built like a boxer, but he's very dense muscle, dense bone. Like he can sprint, but he hates like any kind of endurance exercise, you know? So like with both of your body types, and even Harley acknowledges like the ectomorph, the mesomorph, and the endomorph, like that is your genetic blueprint. But even within that blueprint, one, it's still healthy to like walk every day. And two, like you're still going to reach your optimal level of a lean body eating a high carb, low fat, plant-based vegan diet. So everyone needs to take that into account though. So like Natasha she can be healthy hormonally and hold a BMI of like 17 to 19, right? Like that's usually where she fluctuates. for myself, like I have just recently dropped down to a 19 BMI, but my body, for the most part in my journey so far, was holding like a 22 BMI. So like that's my range. Somebody like my sister, for instance, she is taller than I am, curvier, bigger bones. Like she's going to, hold a different BMI range that's healthy for her, but her body's still at like a very lean body weight, So like you'd have to calculate like body fat percentages too. Like let's say you're at your leanest, right? And you're 2% body fat, because I think that that's like the lowest a man can go, like for health purposes.
That would probably be about 215 for me.
Yeah, exactly. And your BMI might be like a 23, 24,
Yeah.
So it's all kind of relative to the person. And that's why I always say, like, we're not all going to look like supermodels or have that cyclist like level leanness. It all depends on our genetics, but we can all be optimally healthy on this diet and lifestyle.
Yeah, like you said, your husband will do. Before my ankle replacement, you couldn't beat me in a 100-meter sprint. But beyond that, I got a bike and I got a car. I'm not, forget it. You ask me to run a mile, I have zero. I'm not doing it. But but like somebody like you might actually want to do something like that. So it just all really depends. So I think the reason I'm bringing this up is because everybody wants to fit a certain aesthetic. I've had people ask me, can I desperately want to get down to, this is a male too, desperately want to get down to 140 pounds and I'm 155. I'm like, I don't know if can you genetically get down there comfortably? I don't know if you can. And I think that's where this kind of conversation comes into hand. Like when I know this is all about me, but like when I went to my chiropractor, he's like, you're the most mesomorph person I've ever seen in my life. I said, yeah, well, I can't get the fat off because of it. But it's just like, so you really have to live within, I think, that body style that you're in. You just can't get away from it.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, the endomorphs are going to have the hardest time dropping the weight too, because those are the people whose bodies respond really well to survival situations. Like they would be the ones who are still alive when no one else has food, because they can starve and maintain their body fat stores. Yeah. So whereas the ectomorph, like they run out of food and like, their body's going to slow their metabolism and promote insulin resistance so that they can maintain their body fat stores, but they don't have enough to survive on, So that is like the biggest difference. And so you can't like compare yourself or be like, I want my body to be this size. You're kind of like stuck where you're at. And I just have been so successful with giving into this process by allowing my body to just do what it's going to do versus forcing it to comply to some kind of aesthetic standard or ideal that isn't natural for me, And you'll be surprised, like when your body is really used to this, like carbohydrate calorie sufficiency, it's healed a bunch of stuff, like where it will go from there. But I feel like everybody's always going to have that like set point, ideal body weight range that you end up maintaining effortlessly. And that also helps to maintain like your hormonal balance and all of that stuff.
Yes. I don't want to get it. I wanted to get into hormones, but we're already 45 minutes in. I think we'll probably do a part 2, but I did want to ask you, because I mean, legit, that could take 45 minutes to go over, if not more.
For sure.
Somebody asked me to ask you, this is actually Fruit Kid. What is your personal best in fitness? What do you consider your personal best in fitness?
Ooh, my PR in a 5K is like 24 minutes. And I consider myself to be an endurance athlete, but I'm not fast. So I feel like I hate running far distances, but like I could keep running like far distances at like a slower pace and just keep going and going. And that's why I like the bike, because it's low impact and I can just ride all day, every day in the hills and stuff. I do have a Strava account where I will do like PRs and stuff on hill segments in my area. And there's like 2 women in my area that are better than I am. So I always aim for like second or third place on my Strava segments. But these women are also, one is like a high level athlete and the other one is a triathlete. So considering I'm a mom, like I'm in mom mode right now, where I've got a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. And this is the first year where like they've both been going to school, the 4-year-old only part-time, where I've had more time to dedicate to improving my fitness. So I'm happy with where I'm at right now. I do run 3 days a week right now. I was doing 4 days a week, but I dropped it back in the wintertime. And I run about 2 miles, maybe 2.5, sometimes a 5K. And my pace is about a 9-minute, 9:30 mile pace. And that's just me like going easy. So I'm happy with that. I feel like if I did actually do a race, I'd come in at like a 25-minute 5K right now, which I'm happy with. I don't think I'll ever get to like a 20-minute 5K unless something like crazy happens. But
yeah,
like I'm happy with that. I want people to understand that the results that I've gotten on a high carb vegan diet, low fat, low protein, eating enough calories, I pretty much do the minimal amount of training like that gets recommended. I do about an hour 7 days a week, and I don't do anything crazy. So it's just kind of like putzing around, and I try to enjoy it because I've spent time where I've really been pushing myself to like get fitter, and I've found I get burned out. And I think it's because I don't have the opportunity to just like rest the rest of the day and not have to like take care of children and things like that. So I'm happy with like the efforts and the fitness I'm able to maintain right now.
Perfect. And then I got another random question. Are you still beefing with Ryan and Angie over at Happy Healthy Vegan? I didn't even know you were, or what it's about.
I don't think I've ever talked to them, and I've never made a video about them, and I don't even know if they're still on YouTube. And I know that they were like high carb vegan and like in the whole scene back in like 2015 with like Freely and Harley and stuff. Yeah, but I don't know what they're up to now, or
Yeah, they didn't specify. They just said that you had a beef with them.
No, I never. I don't know what that's about.
All right, all the other
questions. Small, so I mean, like I said, my channel and my social media is like pretty small. Like I've never like gotten real big and like had like I mean, I will make videos about like high carb Hannah and stuff, but it's more like objectively like, hey, she's promoting like under eating, like the last 5 years, she's yo-yoed herself. Like I like to point those things out. But so when I make reaction videos or have beef with anybody, it's generally I'm coming at them objectively, like, hey, you're promoting something that's, promoting an eating disorder or something like that. So
yeah.
Make sure you're not doing that and I won't come after you.
All right. I think all the other questions that I had both on Instagram and YouTube were answered. I do have this one here is how much do you charge for coaching? But I think I'm going to just let you talk to people about that yourself on your own. So I'm going to link all that down below so everybody can go check your coaching group out and all.
Yeah. I have a link. You can leave a link for my coaching page. I have a website and you can just click the link for my coaching page and it breaks everything down and you can read the description of everything that I offer.
Perfect. Yeah. So I'll link that down in the description section down below. You can go check Victoria out. And that's it. So thanks for coming on the channel.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
And I'm sure there's going to be enough here. We'll do well, this is actually part 2. I guess we'll do a part 3 in here somewhere.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I have surprises to talk about coming up, so that'll be fun.
That will be. All right. Well, thanks. Subscribe, like, all that good stuff, and we will talk to you next time.
Bye.
Peace.
Peace out.